The person who smiled at you yesterday is the same one who stabbed you today. And the worst part? Schopenhauer knew they would. He figured out the mechanics of human betrayal 2 centuries ago. And almost nobody listened. Because the truth he uncovered is too uncomfortable to accept. It means the problem isn't the people who betrayed you. The problem is what you believed about them in the first place. That's not a comforting thought. But comfort was never what Schopenhauer was offering. Most people think betrayal is an accident, a mistake, a moment of weakness from someone who was otherwise good. They tell themselves, he changed. She didn't mean it. Things got complicated. And so they grieve, they recover. And then, almost inevitably, they get betrayed again by someone new, or sometimes by the exact same person. And they're just as blindsided the second time as they were the first. This is not bad luck. This is a failure to understand human nature at its most fundamental level. Schopenhauer spent his life staring into the darkest corners of human behavior. And what he found wasn't evil in the traditional sense. It wasn't monsters and villains. It was something quieter and far more disturbing. He found that human beings are almost entirely driven by will, a blind, unconscious, insatiable force that does not care about your feelings, your history, your sacrifices, or your love. People are not cruel because they choose to be. They are cruel because the force driving them forward has no capacity for loyalty. It only knows want. It only knows need. And when you stop serving that need, the warmth disappears as if it was never there. That's the first dark truth. The people who betrayed you weren't pretending to care. In that moment, they probably did. But human affection is conditional in a way that most of us refuse to acknowledge. It is tied to usefulness, proximity, and self-interest, not to permanence. When Schopenhauer wrote that the world is driven by blind will rather than rational choice, he was warning you about this. He was telling you that most people are not the authors of their own behavior. They are passengers inside an animal that wants, fears, and grasps. And they call it love, loyalty, and friendship to make it sound noble. Here is where it gets even darker. The people most likely to betray you are not your enemies. Your enemies you watch. Your enemies you prepare for. The people who destroy you are always the ones you trusted the most. Because trust is the window you left open, and betrayal is what climbs through it. Think about every significant wound you carry from another person. Was it a stranger who caused it? Almost never. It was a friend who knew exactly which words would break you. A partner who understood your insecurities better than anyone and used them as weapons when the relationship turned cold. A colleague who smiled in meetings and undermined you in every hallway conversation you weren't part of. Betrayal requires intimacy. You cannot be betrayed by someone who never had access to you. This is what Schopenhauer understood, and what most modern psychology still dances around. He did not believe in idealized human goodness. He believed that beneath the polished surface of civilization, beneath the handshakes and the vows and the declarations of loyalty, something far more primitive was always running. And that thing does not feel guilt the way we expect it to. It rationalizes. It justifies. It tells the person doing the betraying that actually, you deserved it, that you pushed them away, that they had no choice. The mind protects itself by turning the betrayer into the victim. And almost every person who has ever hurt you has convinced themselves, deeply, sincerely convinced themselves, that they were justified. This is the layer most people never reach. We spend years angry at betrayal. We obsess over what was done to us. We ask why, endlessly, as if there is some answer that will finally make sense of it. But Schopenhauer's answer is brutal and liberating at the same time. There is no why that will satisfy you, because the act was not primarily about you. It was about them, their fear, their ambition, their need to protect something, their image, their comfort, their future. You were in the way of what they wanted. or you stopped providing what they needed, and so you were moved aside. With words, with silence, with betrayal. The hardest part of absorbing this truth is what it means for how you see people going forward. Because once you accept that human will is fundamentally self-directed, you cannot unsee it. You start noticing the transactions beneath the warmth. You see how quickly someone's loyalty evaporates when their circumstances change. You recognize the subtle ways people value you for what you give them rather than who you are. And this can make the world feel very cold. But here is the twist. Here is what Schopenhauer understood that separates wisdom from bitterness. Seeing this truth clearly does not make you cynical. It makes you precise. The people who get destroyed by betrayal, over and over, are not people who love too much. They are people who refuse to see clearly. They gave access without observation. They trusted declarations instead of patterns. They confused someone's need for them with someone's love for them. And they paid for that confusion in the most painful currency there is. The wise response to Schopenhauer's insight is not to close yourself off. It is to stop expecting human nature to behave like the stories we were told about it. It is to watch more than you speak, to give people time to reveal themselves through actions, through consistency, through what they do when they have nothing to gain from you. Real loyalty is not announced. It is demonstrated in silence, in inconvenience, in moments when walking away would have been easier. Very few people are capable of this, but they exist. And the only way to find them is to stop confusing everyone else for them. There is another layer here that cuts even deeper. Schopenhauer noticed something about suffering that most people find impossible to believe, that a significant portion of human cruelty comes not from indifference, but from envy. People do not only betray those they care nothing about. They betray the ones whose life reflects something they cannot have. Your success, your happiness, your clarity, your progress. These things create a silent fury in people who feel stuck. And sometimes, the person who seems most supportive is building a private resentment they themselves don't fully understand, until one day it erupts in an act of sabotage or abandonment that shocks you completely. This is not paranoia. This is pattern recognition. The people who smile the hardest at your wins are not always the ones who want them for you. Sometimes the smile is a mask over something older and more wounded, and you will never see it coming if you are looking at the smile instead of the eyes. So what do you do with all of this? You stop performing innocence. You stop being surprised. You start treating trust as something earned across time, not given across a conversation. You protect your most vulnerable parts, your dreams, your doubts, your deepest fears, until someone has proven, repeatedly, without benefit to themselves, that they will handle those things with care. You become harder to access, not colder, not broken, just selective. Because the world Schopenhauer described is not a world without genuine human connection. It is a world where genuine connection is rare, and the cost of not recognizing that is a life spent recovering from people who were never who you needed them to be. The final truth is this: betrayal will find you again, not because you are weak or unlovable or cursed, but because you live among human beings, complicated, self-interested, frightened, and driven by forces they barely understand. The question is not how to avoid being hurt. The question is whether you will finally learn to see people clearly before you hand them the power to destroy you. Schopenhauer was not a man who trusted easily. He was not a man who pretended. He looked at the world without the comfortable fiction that people are mostly good, mostly loyal, mostly consistent. And in that ruthless clarity, he found something most people never find. He found peace. Not the peace of warmth and belonging, but the peace of a man who is never again blindsided, who expects nothing from human nature that human nature cannot give, who saves his deepest trust for the rarest of people, and never confuses everyone else for them. That is not a dark way to live. That is the only honest one.